right, so Damien is going to talk to us about knowledge graphs and neural nets. And if you, like I told you before, if you've ever seen him speak, you know why. He's our closing keynote. And if you haven't, you're going to know why we did it. So
Good.
Thank you, Damien.
Thanks. And 40 minutes on the board, if I could. I'm going to be breaking my words per minute record, so belt in. I've been a lawyer since 2002. I worked for the chief judges of state and federal district courts. I litigated for about 15 years for a big law firm. I worked for Best Buy for a bunch of their commercial litigation. I also worked for victims of Bernie Madoff. I also helped sue JP Morgan over the mortgage-backed security crisis. So I did high-stakes bet the company litigation. I've also been a coder since '85. This is me. This is my Commodore 128 I used to be able to code up BASIC back in 1985. My mom loves this photo. So the number of lawyers that are also big law refugees, that are also judicial clerks, that also know technology, there aren't a lot of us around. I'm one of those in there. In 2015, I pitched Thomson Reuters. I said, here's legal tech that I think can change the world. You should build it and hire me. And they were dumb enough to hire me. So I led a team of 100 programmers, 50 lawyers building this really big thing for TR. I then went to cybersecurity, where the biggest thing I did was Facebook hired me and my company to investigate Cambridge Analytica. So I spent a year of my life on Facebook's campus with Facebook's data scientists and my former FBI, CIA, NSA people that worked with me to figure out how bad guys use Facebook data. I was on Facebook's campus Monday through Friday for about 57 weeks in a row. The stuff I would do on Monday would make the New York Times and the Times of London by Friday. At the end of a 14-hour workday at Facebook, I said to my buddy, hey, do you want to break music? He said, F yeah, let's break music. Except he didn't say F yeah. And since I'm at this conference, he said, fuck yeah, let's do this. So what we've done is we brute forced, we've created and copyrighted 471 billion melodies. We did that through brute force. You can brute force a password by going AAA, AAB, AAC. I did that through music. I went to da 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 do, da da re, da 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 mi, da da fa, until I mathematically exhausted every melody that's ever been and ever can be to the tune of 471 billion melodies. I then wrote them all to disk, and once they're written to disk, they're copyrighted. So I've copyrighted 471 billion melodies, then put everything in the public domain to protect You Stole My Melody lawsuit defendants. This is the TED Talk that's been seen a couple million times. Before my TED Talk, every defendant lost. After my TED Talk, every defendant has used my arguments and has won. So Katy Perry, Led Zeppelin for Stairway to Heaven, Ed Sheeran twice, once in the UK, once in the US, all argued what I argued in my talk, that maybe those melodies are unoriginal, therefore uncopyrightable. This guy says that I rock, and my buddy says, my buddy said Elon Musk has shitty judgment in all areas, except for one. Maybe this one, he maybe got right. This is Jeff Hinton. I was able to hang out with him in San Francisco and of course he just won the Nobel Prize a bit ago. We talked. I said, I'm using your tools every day. Thank you for your contributions. He said, I'm not doing anything at this moment. He said, what are you doing with with large language models? I said, I'm trying to help the world get better access to justice. He said, that's the reason I actually built these. So anyway, he's a really sweet guy. These days, my day job is with VLEX, where we have 1 billion legal documents, cases, statutes, regulations, motions, briefs, pleadings, not just in the United States, but in 100 countries worldwide, where I maybe have the best job on the planet, where I get to extract all of those data points and then feed them back using large language models. I also help lead SALI, the legal data standard, as well as SALI, which I'm going to tell you more about in a bit. This is where the Financial Times a few months ago talked about legal data standard works that we're doing for SALI, and literally just yesterday, we're talking about SALI and the work that we're doing to build tooling to be able to implement SALI. So when people ask what I do lots of things. I also am leading up an AI sandbox within Minnesota to help access to justice, the 92% of legal needs that are unmet because we lawyers are too expensive. The Minnesota bar said maybe if you use large language models to help that 92%, you will not be prosecuted for the unauthorized practice of law. So we're trying to help access to justice using large language models. And so I'm working with bar associations around the country on this question. You know this guy? He appointed me chair of an autonomous vehicles commission to see whether or not Minnesota should or should not regulate autonomous vehicles. I speak a lot, including to this judge who got attacked on the bench. I spoke at Stanford, at Montana, New York City, a bunch of law schools, Estonia, Virginia. Just in the past weeks, I spoke at the Legal Ops just down the streets, AILA. I talk a lot. Just 60 flights this year, 70 cities. I get 100 presentations. I still have 50 more to go. And here I am talking to you guys. So let's talk about knowledge management. We all are dealing with this every day. And so what we're doing, a way to solve it is to tag things up. We've talked about tagging a lot. And then use neural nets on that newly tagged information to be able to do transformative work. This is really the holy grail. because both of those together are better than either of them separately. So of course, everyone needs precision and recall. Precision is finding that needle in the haystack. And so the idea is that you need high precision and high recall. So if you think about the whole corpus of all the world, all the legal data, you retrieve some data, and there's relevant data, and of course there's an overlap. And where there's an overlap, that's good, but where there's not an overlap, that's bad. It's either a false positive or a false negative. So what you want to do, of course, is to be able to increase precision and increase recall. That is, increase what you have that it actually is correct, and make sure you're getting all the things. So if you have low overlap between what's retrieved and what's relevant, that's bad, low precision, and low recall. And then, of course, if you have the relevant things, you have most of them, but there's a lot of things that you've missed, that's low precision and high recall. You don't want that either. And then separately, you also don't want to have high precision and low recall. What you do want is to have what you retrieve being pretty much the same as what's relevant. That's including both high precision and high recall. That's the holy grail of how you're able to get the things that you need. But that's really hard to get to. But it's easier if you use tags, because then you can be able to not have to go on the fly with large language models, but instead tag things up on the front end, pre-populate the tags with high precision and high recall so that you can then use a large language model to be able to push things through. So structured data to be able to find and filter, saying, what have we done in this area of law for this legal service for this jurisdiction? And then, once it's tagged up, use the large language models across that well-tagged data to do better retrieval augmented generation, to be able to better do reasoning to the extent that that can be done. So tag up all your matters. We've been talking about how you can do that for a bunch of times. Tag up all your documents. This is a merger agreement here. Tag up all of your time entries. This is a patent case. And then within each of those documents, you could say, let's tag up all of the directors and officers is a thing, exchange agent is a thing, and then review, deposition, contract, affidavit. Each one of the things on those tags is a SALI tag. So this is essentially a way that you could be able to not just do the document types, but also all the contents of those documents. So each of these, this is a motion to dismiss for the, I think it's the OpenAI case. Literally each one of these is a SALI tag. So what if you could tag all these things up, everything that matters in here, and then marks the spans. Say this is the section that relates to Article 3 standing. Here's the section that relates to DMCA claim, et cetera. And that's what we're building right now with SALI. SALI is building a way to be able to programmatically tag these things and then tag up the spans between those things. So SALI has everything that is the substantive law and the business of law. So for example, if you deal with research, analytics, knowledge management, or with RFPs, experience management, pricing, et cetera, these things relate to each other. Every time a lawyer says these words, which is the favorite words out of any lawyer's mouth, it depends. Every time I say that somebody says that to me, I say, it depends on what? And then whatever comes out of that lawyer's mouth, I add to SALI. So everything that matters to the law is going into SALI. There's a tag for that. We've been tagging this for the last bunch of years. So one of the things that we do is we allow for multiple parentage. If you ask a lawyer what kind of claim is negligent misrepresentation, they would say, well, it's a negligence claim. And the lawyer 2 would say it's also a misrepresentation claim. And lawyer 3 would say, yeah, but it's also a defamation claim. It is all three of those things. So how do you settle the argument between all three? You shouldn't, because it is all three of those things. Also with relationships, maritime negligence is a negligence claim. It's also an admiralty claim argued in admiralty court related to the area of law, that's admiralty and maritime law and the water transportation industry and the asset that is watercraft. This is not just parentage, but it's also relationships. So you can imagine traversing this graph to be able to say, hey, large language model, give me all of the admiralty and maritime claims and water transportation industry matters to be able to see if this might be a better retrieval system. So what if you could automate this to be able to say this lease agreement is a lease agreement, and ACME is a lessor, and EMCA is a lessee, and this is what SALI is building. That is, we're building all these tools and making it free and open source that you can run locally on a laptop, et cetera. And of course, as it gets better, the precision and the recall for these tagging will be better and better going forward. We're just being used by tiny companies like Thomson Reuters, LexisNexis, Bloomberg, Microsoft in-house, and Intel, and some of the biggest law firms in the world are all coalescing around SALI. What we're doing for everyone is what we were doing for Thomson Reuters. Corey at Thomson Reuters said, his boss said, hey, we have 30 products. They don't talk to each other. Make them talk to each other. And Corey said, oh, man, I'm going to have to create a taxonomy, then an ontology. That's really hard, and especially since he's not a lawyer. But then he looked at SALI, and he's like, oh, SALI's got everything I need. So Thomson Reuters and Imran, who I'm working with now, is using SALI to connect all 30 of their products to be able to make APIs to make them talk to each other. That's an internal problem that we're solving for them. we're also solving an external problem because now they can say to all their law firms, if you want to talk to these 30 products, send me the SALI tags. And then you can be able to talk to all 30 of my products. So that is an external problem that we're solving. And we're not just solving that internal external problem for a TR, we're doing that for every single logo on here. Everyone has internal systems that don't talk to each other, and everyone has external systems that don't talk to each other. So this is a common lingua franca for everyone. So as we think about what the things that we are counting lots of things, including areas of law. An area of law is intellectual property law, and a type of intellectual property law is patent law. And so, of course, patent law, you might say, where's patent litigation versus patent prosecution, registration? And SALI, very smartly, before I joined, separated area of law from service that's being provided. Because on day one, the client will come in and say, should I get a patent? And then a few days later say, let's go ahead and file the patent, license the patent, litigate the patent, and deal with patent assets in bankruptcy. Each of these is a service that is distinct from the area of law that is patent law. And the reason this makes sense is because you can imagine we could have instead structured it to say patent litigation is a child and patent prosecution is a child. But then you'd have to do the same thing for copyright litigation and copyright registration, do the same thing for trademark litigation and trademark, it's turtles all the way down. So tag number one is patent law, is tag number one. And then on intake, you say tag number two. And then a few days later, add tag three, add tag four, as the matter keeps going forward. This is just a much smarter way to be able to structure your data. And then, of course, patent law is always called patent law unless you're German or Spanish or French or Portuguese or Hindi. There's lots of ways to express patent law, but there's only one unique identifier. And that unique identifier is what's being used by every single one of these companies here. That is, everyone is attributing patent law with this identifier. And we've built a SALI API so that if you say to me at VLEX, hey, VLEX, send me all of your patent law things, you would send me an API call with this identifier, and I'll send you all of my patent law things. And then eventually change the endpoint to TR, and they'll send you all of their patent law things. Change the endpoint to Lexis, to iManage, to NetDocuments. Eventually, everyone will then be able to push and pull data using the same unique identifier here. So this is the idea of that every single thing, regardless of what it's being expressed as, has one identifier. Then, of course, if I say something that is false about Patrick, then he can sue me for negligent misrepresentation. And Patrick, that is probably going to happen by the end of this presentation. So get your lawyers ready. Of course, 3 lawyers would say, what kind of claim is it? It's a negligence claim. And then lawyer 2 would say it's a misrepresentation claim, or it's a defamation claim. Of course, it's all 3. So if you run a query for any one of these 3 things, then you could be able to get in there. It is all 3 of those, and it's also, I went through some jurisdictions, and some jurisdictions call it negligent misrepresentation causing harm. That is a synonym, but all of them have the same unique identifier that's here. So this is the idea of multiple parentage. Then, if you happen to run into a bridge with a ship, hypothetically, you can get sued for maritime negligence. Maritime negligence is, of course, a negligence claim. This is also an Admiralty maritime claim that is related to Admiralty Court, which is related to Admiralty and maritime law, which is related to the water and transportation industry, which is related to the asset that is watercraft, that is related to the ship and boat building industry. So you can imagine how a large language model set forth on this beautiful structured data to be able to say, now, as I run a query, now this will help me do a better retrieval augmented generation because we already have this well-structured relationships between this. So what SALI is doing is we're building more and more of these relationships, saying that this thing is related to that thing so that we can have a better RAG with higher precision and higher recall. This is not just substantive law, like I've been talking about before, but this is also engagement attributes, business of law. So is this a flat fee case, or is this an hourly case? If it's an hourly case, is it blended rate, collared rate, discounted rate, standard rate? Or if it's fixed fee, is it by day, week, month, document, et cetera? Every single thing that matters to the law, we're counting and are able to go through and be able to set a unique identifier to it. This is the SALI extraction of vendors. Mike Bomarito and I are working with a guy named Enrico, who is a brilliant guy out of the Valley, and then John Scrutato, a lot of you know from Latham & Watkins. We're building a way to be able to extract and tag all of the SALI tags. If you input any document, you're going to be able to output, and then we're going to have other folks joining us too. This is Clem. This is large language models like GPT-4 were built on some of the grossest parts of the internet, Twitter, Reddit. They built theirs on things like statutes, rules, regulations, judicial opinions, contracts. This is a foundational LLM that they built with 273 Ventures, their for-profit company, and now they've actually donated the entire stack to the nonprofit called Dalia. That nonprofit, I'm on the board of directors on, and so is Joe Green, who's sitting over there. And so they're giving this away for free. So this is a legal large language model given away for free. And we're using this legal large language model to be able to tag up all of the input any text and then tag it up with tags on the end. So this is some of the things on GitHub. Everything that we're doing is free and open source. It's freeze in speech, freeze in beer. You could be able to freeze in beer, take it if you want. Freeze in speech, you can fork it, make it better, do pull requests. So this is a better RAG because regular RAG, you do vector embedding searches, but a well-structured tag RAG, you much have better. It's a much better way to be able to do structured data. We'll go quickly since we don't have a lot of time. When you think about knowledge graphs, this is what Amazon and Facebook, to say people that like this book might like that book. People who have these friends might like those friends. This idea is a knowledge graph. Mona Lisa is related to Da Vinci. These are the ideas that you have nodes, and then you have connections between the nodes. You have spouses, nationalities, people that work for companies. You can really map every relationship with large language models. So, and with knowledge graphs. And so a human sees it looks like this, but a vector is just an embedding. But a knowledge graph can be able to say that apples have bodies that are round, et cetera. So that is what we've built. We've built a knowledge graph, much like Google, Amazon, Facebook, et cetera, but a knowledge graph for the law. And we're being donated by some of the biggest law firms in the world, some of the biggest legal tech vendors in the world, and some of the biggest corporations in the world have donated their data to us. So we're a superset of all the law firms and all the vendors that you saw before. So once you have that, then you can say, now we can build a better RAG so that you can ask a question, you can retrieve the graph, that is traverse the graph using the large language model, and then you can get a much better corpus of both precision, the things that matter, and then a recall, pulling in all the things that matter, and then be able to have that much better corpus and move it over to the documents, and then do the question in context, run the prompting, and then get the response this way. This is just a much smarter way because it's based on the law. So we help with extraction, being able to tag things, even though if you're tagging with humans, that's a bad idea. Do it programmatically. And then we allow interoperability between system 1 and system 2 internally, as well as system 3 and system 4 externally. And then most importantly, this is deterministic. Knowledge graphs will happen the same way every single time, whereas large language models are probabilistic. You have to roll the dice. Analytics, how many of these things are these type of things? How many are that type of things? Large language models and tagging can help that. And of course, you can pre-process all these tags, so you don't have to run it at runtime. So what if you could do all those and have it as an open source tool, free and open source on GitHub? So humans should not be tagging. Everyone has lived this horror, right? Seriously, if you're using humans to tag, you're probably doing it wrong. You should use humans at most to be able to validate machine-created tags. That's the better way to do it. So when you think about tagging, we have massive amounts of unstructured data, or probably quasi-structured data. We do have tables of contents and headings. But the systems that we have right now, like the nature of suit codes, they suck, because the nature of suit code says it's a trademark case. But if you go to the complaint, yes, it's also a trade dress, false designation, and a copyright case. The nature of suit code doesn't say that. But what if you could extract all of those things from every complaint and be able to tag those things out? And that's what we're building a way to be able to pull all of those tags out. There's a merger agreement, and each one of these things in here, consideration, corporate organization, financial statement, et cetera, each of these is also a SALI tag. So extract each one of these things out and tag them up. So tag up everything that matters, and then for everything that matters, put spans between this section of the thing and that section of the thing. And once you put a span between that, then you have a much more accurate RAG, because you could be able to say, I just want the section of this brief that talks about DMCA claims. Cool. Or I just want the section of the brief that relates to breach of contract claims. Cool. Large language models can't really do the differentiation that way. This is a much more precise, more deterministic way to be able to do those things. And now you're able to push and pull these between firms, clients, and their technologists. Of course, everyone should be speaking the same legal data language. So the idea that Jason Barnwell from Microsoft said, cool, I want to be able to take all the work that I do internally at Microsoft, tag it up, every business question, tag it up, and then to the extent in-house can't answer it, push it to my law firm, and then when they give me an answer, I want them to tag up and send it back to me so that my business person can have those tags for the next time. So this is the idea that you can push and pull data to and from your clients and make them smarter. Everyone has internal systems that don't talk to each other. Everyone has external systems that don't talk to each other. So SALI allows you to be able to push and pull data to and from those systems. LLMs can't do that. There's no way, people said, why do I need tags when I have LLMs? This is why. Because your LLM is different than my LLM, which is different than everybody else's LLM. But if everybody's tagging, use the standard, then you're able to push and pull data in a standard way. LLMs also can't count. We all know that, right? But how often does this court in this jurisdiction decide this result? Or what's market for this document type in this jurisdiction, in this industry? How often do these types of matters include this aspect? How much does these things cost? These are all tagging things, not large language model things. So you should tag up each of these. And by the way, each of these is in SALI. So use SALI as essentially a buffet of tags that you could be able to then tag up and put them here. LLMs can't do what I've just described. When Best Buy would ask me, what are the odds of winning this motion for summary judgment? I would say pretty good or not bad. And this is actually a survey of people to say, maybe, here's the distribution curve of won't happen to will happen. So maybe is all the way from 1 to 9 for maybe. So much better to be able to give them these actual numbers, to be able to say summary judgment in federal courts, the odds are 54%, but in this court, the odds drop down to 45%. But for this judge, it actually goes up to 56%, but for trademark cases, the odds are 1 in 3. How do you get these numbers? Tagging. We've tagged every single one of these things. And if you're a Best Buy, would you rather hear pretty good or not bad? Or would you rather hear before you spend 100 grand on this motion, it's gonna be a 1 in 3 chance? Once you tag, you get the insights. And of course, each of these tags that you see here is a SALI tag. Literally every single one of these is a SALI tag. So if you tag them up, you can get better analytics. LLMs cannot do counting. Tags require counting. I was on Facebook's campus, and they have posters all over the place. And one of the posters said, not everything you count actually counts, and not everything that counts is countable. And what that means is there's a correlation between Nicolas Cage movies and swimming pool deaths. It turns out that when one goes up, the other goes up. You can count those things, but they don't actually count, right? Then also, not everything that counts is countable. The fact that a judge at age 15 got in a fist fight with the opposing counsel, that's not in my data set, but that kind of counts, right? Not everything that counts is countable. So really what we should be doing in our legal sphere is everything that matters, if it counts, tag it up. Tag it up with SALI tags. That is single thing for the last 4 years I found that counts, that matters, I've added that to SALI. So when we think about knowledge graphs, these are nouns and verbs. Bill Gates is married to Melinda Gates, or at least was, worked for Microsoft. So when you think about SALI nouns, we have nouns like legal service provider, and we have nouns like document types. And we also have verbs like drafted, engaged, negotiated. So you can connect these three things to say, lawyer drafted a distributor agreement, or bank negotiated a debt agreement. Noun, verb, noun. That is what's called a triple. So really, knowledge graphs are really based on these triples. So lawyer, drafted contract, buyer negotiated with seller. These are all SALI tags, both the verbs and the nouns. And then you could also say party A owes duty to party B. Duty owing is also a SALI tag. Assistant served a notice. Every single task of a lawyer is related here. We can reflect the world in these triples. And that's what knowledge graphs are doing, not just for legal, but for the entire knowledge graphs you're going to hear are connecting neural symbolic AI. That's what I've just been describing. So what we've done in SALI is done top-down. I've gone through every table of contents for every treatise I've ever found. I've done a top-down representation of every the biggest law firms in the world have donated their taxonomies. Thomson Reuters has donated theirs. NetDocuments has donated theirs. And so I've done this top-down ontology. But imagine if you could also do a bottom-up ontology. This is the US tax code. And what Mike Bomarito did is threw the entire tax code into this. And wouldn't it be cool if you could take that bottom-up ontology and do it? So this, you can see the tax code. It collects things like estate. So here you can see estate is a concept from the US tax code. I said, Mike, how'd you do this? And he's like, how would you think that I would do that? I said, well, bag of words? Did you, like whatever the most common words are? And he's like, that's what I would have done. But what he did is actually prompted using a large language model saying, you're an expert in RDFS OWL SCOS. Please take all the nodes and all the edges between the nodes from this entire corpus of the US tax code, and this is what's spit out. So this has actually extracted all of the things that matter, all the concepts that matter from the US tax code. So imagine now taking this bottom-up corpus, this what the large language model interprets to be all the factors that matter, and then connecting it with our top-down. And also, we've done this. This is the guy, Enrico, I talked to you about earlier. He's taken the entire case law access project that Harvard did. In the case law access project, it's extracting things like business and homicide and civil service and misconduct. These are all bottom-up representations of every single concept that matters to the law. And so what we're doing right now is connecting these bottom-up representations from all the code and then connecting with our top-down to enrich the top-down. So all those things will now become part of SALI and SOLI to be able to better enrich what matters to the law. Again, it depends. What does it depend on? We're adding that to SALI SOLI. So we're curating all the tasks. This is a patent in my name when I used to work for Thomson Reuters, along with a bunch of other folks who used to work at TR. And what we were doing is creating matter plans. So whether it's a trade secret litigation or private merger or tenant claim or patent prosecution, every single legal matter, we were breaking down the tasks for those matters and then creating plans for those tasks. But that gave me an idea. I thought, these things aren't copyrightable, right? Areas of law are not copyrightable. No one owns agriculture law or banking law, right? No one owns advisory service and transnational actual purpose. Now, nobody owns the industries. And so I'm a copyright lawyer, and there's the idea-expression dichotomy. It means that ideas are uncopyrightable. Facts are uncopyrightable. Expressions of those ideas, if they're made by a human, are copyrightable, but if they're made by a machine, they are not copyrightable. So really, as we think about, this is two-dimensional vector space. This is how large language models work. And this is plotted out. You can see that the showery things and the garden hosey things are kind of clustered together. These are all facts and ideas that are uncopyrightable. Now add a third dimension, a z dimension, x, y, and z. And imagine how all the legal concepts are actually in this three-dimensional vector space. Now add a fourth dimension. And our brains can't, right? Our brains can't even figure out what a fourth dimension is, right? And now add a 10th dimension. Now add a 100th dimension. Now add a 1,000th dimension. And now add a 12,000th dimension. And a 12,000 dimensional vector space is where large language models live today. So as we think about where does legal fit in here, each one of these is an idea, a fact, a concept. A motion to dismiss is always called a motion to dismiss unless you're in California, where it's called a demur. So these two in vector space would be in the same place. Both demur and motion to dismiss are in the same, they are ideas that are uncopyrightable. So all of these things are facts and ideas that are uncopyrightable. So as we think about structured data, we should be thinking about tagging up all the things that matter, tagging up every document that matters, tagging up every task that matters, and then be able to say, why did you cite this thing where your side lost? Why didn't you cite the same thing where your side won? If only there were a menu of everything that matters as donated by everybody you see on your screen here. This is a collective. There was Alma in the audience. She said, Damien, it seems like every question that is asked, the answer for you is SALI. I was like, yeah, it's because SALI's the answer to so many questions, right? If you have well-structured, well-tagged data that are donating from all the things that matter, of course, that is going to solve so many of our problems. And SOLI is building tooling to be able to extract that data and to be able to augment it both through bottom-up analyses, as I talked about earlier, as well as making connections, the edges between the nodes. So let's do a standardized ontology. Why don't you adopt it? Tag up all your texts. Everyone uses the same tags, whether you're a firm or a client or a tech provider. And let's connect those internal systems with the external systems. And of course, that way you're going to be interoperable. Everyone can have that same unique identifier that's being pushed and pulled and use the same API calls, just change the endpoints depending on who your service provider is. And by the way, the API, SALI API was released last year. A big help from Thomson Reuters. A lot of their Thomson Reuters staff was able to work with the whole consortium to be able to make a better standard. So we have this SALI API right now, and we're going to continue to make it better. Your taxonomy, if it's like most of the taxonomies I've worked with within law firms, looks something like appeals to the PTAB. That's not a tag because the area of law is patent law. The service being provided is a regulatory practice because the PTAB, the Patent Trial and Appeal Board, is a regulatory body. And the PTAB is not an area of law. The PTAB is a forum. So now if you look at this, why would anyone settle for this Frankenstein on the left-hand side? Why wouldn't you want more granular data to say, patent law, show me all the patent things, or show me all the regulatory things, or show me all the PTAB things, rather than having to deal with this kind of Frankensteining? We're breaking up each tag into its component parts, so you can mix and match. So implementation for everybody follows the same 3 steps. Number 1, you take your taxonomy, ontology, and map it to ours. And we're building tools to be able to do that programmatically. You input 1,000 of your rows, we'll then map it to the 1,000 rows that are SALI rows. Then, to the extent that most people say, gosh, SALI's ontology is way better than our ontology, so they usually use that as the foundation. And then, if you have anything that we don't yet have, just give us your outliers and we'll add them to SALI. So this idea is that we'll then contribute to it, so that now all of your, Thomson Reuters, for example, said, you have 98% of our things, so we'll just donate the 2% to you, and then that's going to be part of SALI, so then it's being used by all of our customers. There's no competitive advantage to be able to have any outliers. So how does this help? Well, of course, at an intake, you tag all the things up and put it in your data lake, and then all of your systems can talk to each other because they're all speaking the same language. You can imagine each one of these people has their own fiefdom. And so we are in the love business at SALI, where people are fighting. They say, no, 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 stop fighting over whether we're going to call it this or call it that. We're going to use SALI, because that's what all our vendors are using, and that's what our clients are using. So stop arguing. We're going to use SALI to be able to take all of our data and be able to push it and pull amongst all of our systems. There are three. When people say we need to have standards, they need to clarify in true taxonomic function. They need to clarify, are we talking metadata standards or content standards or process standards? Because SALI, SOLI, NOS legal list, these are all metadata tagging standards, which is very different than bond terms in one NDA to say, okay, what does a standard NDA content look like? That's a very different question, which is also different of what is the standard process that we do to do this kind of thing, to do that kind of thing. When people say we need to standardize, I say standardize to the metadata or standardize to the content, because those are two different things. Because really what you need is to standardize on content, you first need to standardize on metadata. That is, take all the documents that are transactional M&A documents in this jurisdiction for this industry, and then you collect all of the force majeure clauses for all of those. And then once you've collected all those force majeure clauses, then you can do a statistical analysis of what's market. Step one, tag it. Step two, then figure out, based on data, what's market, rather than the anecdata, the gut instinct of the lawyer that says, no, I've been doing this for 20 years, this is market, right? Data tells the truth. Tag it up first, and then you figure out what's market after that. Automate it. If you're using humans, you're doing it wrong. So there are lots of standards over the years. We're not the first, nor will we be the last. All of them in the past have required human tagging. SOLI is building tools to make that easier, so you don't need to do human tagging. So in the 47 seconds I have left, I'm not going to go over the rest of this. Maybe I'll spend those 47 seconds answering questions you might have. And if not, I can talk about synthetic legal data. Go ahead, Sally. Sally, ask me about Sally. That's fun.
We have achieved the, I don't know. Sally, ask me about Sally.
Yeah, I was going to have first a comment and then a question. The first is, thank you for making me all powerful. And second, what do you do when the same term in two different types of law are two different concepts? The civil law, say in Germany, and the common law in the UK, they use the exact same term. I think it's trust, but it's totally different legal concepts. How do you detect that?
Yep, so this happens frequently, so you can imagine a license. A license could be, I license a patent to you. It also could mean my driver's license. So those have two different concepts. So that is thing number one, disambiguation between this kind of license and that kind of license. We have two separate nodes for that. Another is that we are truly a worldwide, where we are being used in India, in the UK, in Latin America, in Hong Kong, in Australia. So of course, both civil law systems and common law systems. And so in India, they said, Damien, you're missing strict liability. I said, no, 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 look, we have strict liability right here. And they said, no, 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 we're not talking about strict product liability. We're talking about if one car gets in an accident with a second car, you don't have to decide who's at fault. The insurance company pays. I said, oh, we actually call that no fault in the United States. And so, so here you can see under no fault claim is here. And you can see that no fault claim is, of course, no fault claim. Here's all the different translations. And in India, this is called a strict liability claim. That is right here in India. So all of them, though, have the same unique identifier that's right here. And that unique identifier.
If you call it two different things here, and you picked one, you said restrictive covenants is what we're calling it. Where does non-competes live? First synonym, so that when somebody looks it up the other way.
Sure. So, we'll do non-compete clause. Non-compete here is a thing. So non-compete covenant is here. You can imagine adding something that calls restrictive covenant. Right, so covenants, then what I would do is I'll go alt label is here, and now that's in SALI. So this is the idea that, right, I mean, that's the, stop arguing about what you call it, right? All of them have the same unique identifier that's right here. So this is the process. You used to be able to say, what are all the things you call the thing? Cool, we'll add it as an alt label. That's why people say, how are you able to get this consortium together? The reason is because you can just add more synonyms. Other questions? If not, I'm out of time. I'm happy to meet with any of you. I think of myself as Johnny Appleseed for taxonomies. So if you give me your list of 1,000 taxonomical items, I'm doing that right now for Mayor Brown. I've been doing that for Clifford Chance, a whole bunch of other big law firms. I've imported them. If you're interested in me doing yours and solely doing yours, happy to do it. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Damien.